Hello students, it's Dr. Yu. We're now on to part 5, education and other sections of your resume. So you have the summary, you have key proficiencies, work experience, and now we have the remaining sections of the resume. So let's get to it. What we're going to look at are the types of education. How do you display this type of education or each type? What are some other sections that you can add to your resume that would be useful? And how do you display those sections? So we're going to go into each of these. First, let's talk about education. So we look at that resume that we were looking at earlier. You can see here, this is a very simple education section because he graduated so long ago that he doesn't have to sell it as much. Now, those of you who are recent college graduates, you're going to be putting a lot of emphasis in education because you probably won't have as much experience. So you're going to have much bigger education sections. But as you get further away from education in terms of years past, you'll sell it less and less in your resume until eventually it becomes like this, where it's just 2 lines. But as a college graduate, this should not be your education section graduating. First, there's 3 different types of education. The first type is a degree. So these are things that you earn from degree conferring institutions. So the general way you put it in is you put the degree, the name of the university or the conferring institution, the city and state of where it's located. Now, sometimes this is optional if it's implied in the name, like if it's the University of Cincinnati, we kind of know it's Cincinnati. So then in that, you wouldn't need city and state. And then graduation year. So the year that you earned it. So here's an example, Bachelor of Arts, English. So make sure you put the type of degree and your major. And if you have minors, you can put English literature, minor in art or whatever. And then the university, and then the year you graduated. Now, if you haven't graduated yet, let's say you graduate next year, then just put the year that you intend to graduate. So you can put anticipated 2022 or whatever, something like that. Anticipated, and then the future year that you intend to graduate. You should have a pretty ballpark idea of when you graduate, okay? You just pay attention to your course of study and all that stuff, and yeah. Now, there are a lot of things that you can add to a college degree section besides just the degree. Here are some things. Number 1, coursework. You can mention key coursework that you took in your degree program that might be relevant to what the job is asking for. And the other reason you might want to put it in there, other than just for like relevance, is it also gives you a free keyword if the course title directly matches up with the keyword that's in the job posting. Secondly, you can talk about skills acquired. So you can have a skills acquired section and talk about, and just kind of list, kind of like a key proficiency section, and just like list the skills that you got in the school. And then that can also function as some keyword hits for you. You can also talk about project highlights. So if you did this really cool project for a class, just because it was for a class doesn't mean it wasn't significant. So even if it was just a project where you wrote a paper about something, but you got an A on that paper, talk about the paper. Or you did some kind of service learning activity for a class, and it was a really cool experience, and it was something that you're proud of, and you did something amazing for it, I would put that on there. So school projects can go on your resume if you think they're impressive and can really say something unique. And then school awards and honors. So your GPA, your honor societies that you were part of, all of those things can go on to your degree section. And this always opens the question, so should I put my GPA on my resume? So usually the rule of thumb is about, and there's not like a law on this, but like usually 3.5 or above is a good GPA, sometimes 3.4. And it also depends on your major too. Were you in a hard major? And so then it gets kind of complicated. So I usually just say 3.4 or above. If you have something like that, put that on your resume. Now, if you don't have a 3.4 or above, then you probably shouldn't put your GPA on your resume because it probably won't look as good. Now, here's the problem though. So then you kind of have the bro, your bro friend like, so C's get degrees. I just get it 2.79. It's okay because I just don't put my GPA on my resume. Yeah. Okay. So the problem with that is if you don't put your GPA on your resume because your GPA is bad, then the problem is that, remember, you're going against 50, 100, large numbers of people. There's going to be somebody in that pile who's going to have a really good GPA, and they're going to display their GPA proudly. And so if it comes down to education, comparing you and that other person, who do you think is going to win? The person who left out their GPA or the person who's flashing it in your face that they got a 3.97? Okay. So it's going to make you less competitive to not have a good GPA. Doesn't mean that you're doomed to a life of suffering, but it just means that you don't have that arrow in your quiver. And when you go on the job market, you want to have all the arrows that you can possibly have in your quiver at once to be competitive on every front, because it's a competition that you're entering. So there's that. And then, yeah, GPA. So I got ahead of myself. Okay. And then that's it. So let's take a moment, because I really want you to think about how to sell your education, especially if you're a college graduate. This is what you're going to have to put a lot of your resume into, is your education section. Think of some aspects of your education so far that you can mention in your resume. So besides just the degree earned, what are some of the things that we just talked about in the previous slide that you could include for the job target that you're applying to? So go ahead and take a minute or two and think about that. Okay, so here's some examples of how to sell your education. So here's one person. Now, it's okay that it takes up this many lines because this is a new college graduate. So they're going to put more emphasis into their education section. So they have the degree, the type of degree, the major, the university, they put the city and state, and then the year they got it. They put their GPA, and then they put the honors here. Good, so pretty efficient. Then list some coursework. So public speaking, video production, graphic design, all of these are skills that would probably be useful in the job market and probably for a job posting. And then when you do the key course projects, just write it like an accomplishment statement, and then just say like what it is and why it was significant. And there you go. Now you told us something else besides just Bachelor of Arts Communication Studies. Like instead of doing the 2-liner, you did all of these things, and it's all valuable stuff. Now, 20 years from now, you probably won't need the majority of this. Like you might keep the magna cum laude, maybe the GPA, but you probably wouldn't need this anymore. Like 20 years from now or 10 years from now, the further away you get from education and you fill in with more experience down the road in time, then the less you can emphasize education and more emphasize experience. So when you're new on the job market, you're going to emphasize education more and experience less because you don't have any. But then it's going to reverse throughout your career, where then education will be less and experience will be more. The other type of education you can get are licenses. So if you have a license, there's all kinds of licenses: nursing, social work, therapy. I mean, there's all, hairdressing. So how I usually do those: title of license, the state in which it's conferred, and then the year it's effective. So registered nurse, state of Missouri, 2014. Some people put their license numbers too. It's up to you if you want to do that. I don't think it's necessary to do that, but if you feel like you need to, you can. And then certifications. So a certification is different from a license because the certification is something you earn through a class. And then sometimes certifications are permanent where you don't have to renew them. So Advanced Cardiac Life Support, American Heart Association, that's how you did it. So the name is certificate, name is certifying organization. So, or if you got like a leadership certificate, something like that. If it does have like expiration, then you would put the years on that as well. So here's another example of education with more added to it. So this would be somebody who is not a college graduate. This is somebody who has a lot of experience. See, they graduated in 2000, but they've done a lot of trainings, for example, like they went to all these trainings. So they went in and put that on there. So if you go to some trainings, like at conferences and such, cool. And then they put their technical skills down here. So if you don't want to put your key proficiencies at the beginning, or you don't want to list all your software at the beginning of the resume, you can also put it in your education section too, if it's not that important to the job. So in his case, this person's case, the technical skills weren't that important. It wasn't an IT job that they were doing, but they still wanted to at least mention that they know how to use all of these things just in case. So they put it in their education section. But if you're an IT person, the essential abilities are the technical skills, put that in your summary or under key proficiencies. So once again, this is where strategy comes into play. How important is it? Do you want to forefront it at the beginning because put the most important stuff first? Or is it something I can just kind of let hang in the education section because it's not as important? Okay, Now let's look at other sections. There's other sections you can add to your resume, but the foundational resume will have a header, which is your name and contact info, some kind of summary, experience, and education. Those 4 sections are going to be critical for every resume in my class. So you want to make sure you have those 4 things. But you can add these other things too if you're extremely well-rounded, and it's great to have all these things if you can. First, you can have additional information or biography. In a section like this, what it's used for is to address things that are mentioned in the job posting that don't necessarily fit work history or education. For example, language skills. So if you're bilingual, you would say bilingual English and Spanish, or English and French, or whatever. So you would want to put that probably in its own section, additional information. You can also put it in summary too. So some people would say, take the bio stuff and just integrate it with summary. But some people are more like, no, make it its own section. So it just depends on what it is that you have to include. Then you have relevant hobbies. So let's say you're applying for a job at Bass Pro Shop. If you are a big fisher hunter person, then it might be very relevant to put that on your resume that, hey, you're an avid fisher and hunter, because that ties into Bass Pro's product line. And so under additional information, you can put, avid fisher and hunter, or you can put it in summary. And then job requirement specification. So in this case, additional information. The reason we have owns reliable transportation, it doesn't seem like why does that matter? Because the job posting specifically says that. And then also the job posting says must be willing to work a demanding schedule. So you're just responding word for word to that. And then the job might also say you have to be able to travel 25%. So to match that in the resume, put under additional information, able to travel 25%. Any of those weird requirements, not weird, but just like requirements in a job posting that just aren't easily addressed in work history or education, either address it in summary or make your own section called additional information or bio and address it directly there. Next, you can add a volunteer section. If you're somebody who volunteers a lot, you can make a whole section. I would call it community involvement, not community service, because community service is what judges make you do. Okay, we don't want to have that kind of affiliation. So call it community involvement. Now, I would sell community involvement just like a job. So put the role, put where you did it. So if it was various, just put various, and then the area, and then the years that you did it. And then still talk about accomplishments. But the thing about community involvement is it kind of expires quicker than work history. So I wouldn't go back further than 5 years. I don't even know why I put 10 years. 10 years is pushing it. So, I mean, if you did something amazing 10 years ago, that's like, I did the Peace Corps. Okay, yeah, put that on there. But if you just I sang Christmas carols, at this nursing home, I probably wouldn't put that. So 5 years probably is the furthest back you'll go, unless you did something super amazing, between 5 and 10 years ago. Like something big. It's got to be big, worth taking space for. And then professional affiliations. So if you're part of any, number one, you should be part of your trade organization. So go back to lecture 1, your trade organization, your industry organization, you should be a member of that automatically. Once you have a career, join that thing and put that on your resume. So that's one reason to also join your professional affiliation or association, is so you can put that on your resume. But also it's a place where, you can list relevant trade organizations that you're proud of. And make sure when you do that, you put the years that you joined. And I even put the months here for this guy, just, because we can. And then if you served, because a lot of these trade organizations have service opportunities where you can serve on the boards or on the committees with them. And it's great networking. And it's also great leadership development because you get to lead things. Mention that service. So in this case, he's the continuing education chair for the Society of Petroleum Engineers. Cool. So if we had more space, so he was low on space, we would have probably talked more about some of the things and done some description accomplishment type stuff, but we just didn't have space there. But that's what we would do. So if you're a college student and you've done a lot of community service, I would probably sell, if you did some amazing stuff that you think would be relevant to where you're trying to go, I would sell those experiences under that. And then you have the triple P, presentation, publications, patents. So there's different ways you can cite patents. You can do the legal way, publications, APA, you can do it APA style or MLA or, whichever, Chicago, whichever suits your organization or industry. Presentations, so here you just have the name of the presentation and where and when. So you would just list those like in bullet points, and that's pretty much it for those. And then lastly, awards and honors. Now, like I said, you only use this section for awards and honors that don't fit work history. So these are things that you got in the community. These may be athletic awards that you think are really relevant to what you're trying to do. They're not going to be job-related awards. So that's the number one thing. If you're going to have an awards section, make sure it's things that don't fit the work history. But secondly, think civic awards, think contests. So if you won speech contests and you're going into professional speaking, that's probably a good thing to put in there. And just distinctions earned in jobs not listed in the resume. So let's say you're only going back 10 years, but you earned an award from a job you had 15 years ago. You can put that on there under awards section. So take a minute, think about your work history, and determine whether you can justify any of these sections: a biography section, volunteer, professional affiliations, the triple Ps, or an additional awards honors section. So go ahead and take a minute, just reflect. Okay, so take some time. If you didn't get enough time now, think about it. Have I volunteered at all? Am I part of any professional affiliations? By the way, school affiliations, we'll talk about extracurricular involvement later. That'll be something to think about too. So we looked at what are the types of education? How do I display education? What other sections can you add? And I gave you about 5 different examples of things that you can add besides the classic 4. And how do I display these other sections? So I gave you examples on how to display those so you know exactly what to do when you want to show them. And then we have part 6, design and strategy, coming up next. It is the final segment of this whole series on resume writing. I will see you in the final segment, and you'll learn about design and how to strategically put your resume together for your situation. See you there.